Hey everyone, John P here. In this video, we're going to be talking about 3 watch brands that are not doing so hot comparatively to the height of the market where all watches were selling always seemingly, right? The big guys, the watches were flying off the shelves, especially the trendy watches. And these are going to be 3 watch brands that certainly were on trend, but I'll share with you some details that should be insightful and show that, unfortunately, for these brands, it seems like they are hitting somewhat troubling times. Now, before we do that, on the wrist today actually is a Vacheron Constantin Overseas. I really love this watch. It's a lot of fun, integrated design, but a little bit different than your AP Royal Oak or one of the others. So I like it. A lot of fun. You can see more about this watch and other things that I do on my Instagram, The Real John P. So as we know, or most of us probably know, there's been obviously a considerable and significant pullback in the watch market, but a lot of it has come from the non-enthusiast segment, right? The people that just want a nice watch, or they want to signal that they have something nice, more Veblen goods, more along the lines of luxury purchases. And with that come the hot brands, right? Rolex, Audemars Piguet, and Patek Philippe. But here in this video, I'm sharing with you, those have had pullbacks, but there's 3 that I think might be surprising. Richard Mille, right? FP Journe, as well as a more approachable brand, but for the same reasons that I'm going to share with you, Ming. Ming watches, probably, definitely the most junior of these brands, but all of these brands are new. That's something to keep in mind, is that compared to some watch brands that are from the 1700s, for example, the old world brands, these 3 are all new entrants to the watch sphere. They're different in their own way, and we're going to talk about it. So first, Richard Mille, it's from 2001, and we really saw this brand take off the last 5 years, 6 years. Every celebrity wants it on their wrist. They're known for their alternative materials and also being on the wrists of celebrities. That's kind of what they're known for. If it weren't for celebrities putting them on their wrist, the watch collecting community might not know them at all, because think about it, 2001, over 20 years later, and it took celebrities putting them on their wrists for them to be hot, right? But if you look on Chrono24, and that's just one place that watches are being sold, so just one location out of all the other places, there's over 1,200 Richard Mille watches. Now, at the peak, there were less than a few hundred for sale on Chrono24, and then we've crept up and we've kept climbing, and now we have over 1,200, and Richard Mille only makes 5,000 watches per year. So to see, or a little over that, but about 5,000, 5,400 rumored watches per year. So when you start seeing this considerable percentage of any year's given production being available just on one platform alone, that is certainly a sign and a signal for me to look at as someone in the watch industry, and anyone out there thinking of buying one or selling one, or you have them in their collection. The prices have also come down considerably. Now, I can't touch on every single Richard Mille watch, and there's so many things and variables specifically for this brand, things like regionality, the specific variation of the watch, the different limited editions, and this sports star, that sports star, the colors, the straps, all of that, a lot of that comes into play for these ultra expensive watches. But just looking at something like an RM16, which has kind of been always trailing behind in demand. The RM16 is the Richard Mille watch. That's the slimline, rectangle case with the curved over lugs on the ends. These were $150,000 for a while. Now there's one available for $70,000. I'm sure you can get it for less. And at the absolute bottom, this watch, believe it or not, about 7 years ago, now at this point, roughly, was about $30,000. So we're seeing a coming back down of these prices, much more in line with where things were before COVID. Now that takes us into FP Journe. Now FP Journe, I can't say anything negative about the quality of the watches. We know FP Journe, high-end independent manufacturer. They make some astounding watches, right? Came out 1999, the company was founded. So once again, newer watch brand. But collectors in the community and buyers didn't really know about the brand until, once again, this big craze, this boom that we saw just getting into COVID, and this boom, this explosion where everyone was talking about watches, investment. A lot of people were placing kind of speculating gambling style funds into certain watch brands, and that is a brand they were doing this with, Journe. Now you see a few hundred Journe available for sale on just the Chrono 24 platform alone. And this is supposed to be a watch brand where you have to wait in lines and waiting lists. And we're seeing watches that are being picked up and seemingly put directly out there to market being sold. And the prices have come down quite a lot as well. Now, both for Richard Mille as well as FP Journe at Del Rey Watch, we've had them in the door in the past, and they would sell. And then when they would sell, we would have more people that would wanted them. The demand was so high that we were seeing. And of course, we work with predominantly enthusiasts, but other people find the watches, especially when you're on the internet and there's demand. But with Journe and Richard Mille, we've had one watch from either of these brands in recent times, the last 2 months or so. And I can honestly say to you, we had 0 inquiries on the watch. In fact, we sold the Richard Mille wholesale to a dealer that is very bullish on the brand for whatever reason they are. So we wholesaled it. But these two brands, not a single question about them. None whatsoever. No one even asking about them. In fact, none. And so when that is such a contrast from everyone at least asking about them out of curiosity to truly no one even acknowledging them, that is concerning to me. Anecdotally, of course, right? This is my personal experience, but we have a great sprinkle of collectors and people that we do work with. So when I see that, it's pretty shocking. Now, before we talk about Ming, I will say that at the end of this video, I'm going to share with you actually watch brands that I see collectors getting into more than they were at the peak of the watch market here within the last couple of years. So I think it is pretty actually interesting to look and see where are collectors going. It's interesting, right? So if you are interested, hang tight. So that takes us into Ming. Ming is another new watch brand, a little bit newer than the others, about 10 years or so newer. 2014, the Ming brand came out, much more approachable in price point, but it's something I talked about on an Instagram reel recently on my Instagram, The Real John P, so check it out. But essentially what you have here is a brand that kind of got caught in this rut. I call it a rut, but maybe it's just their branding. Their whole image is cool and quirky watches with this unique kind of style. And unfortunately, that's where they are. They came out with a dive watch. The dive watch didn't really have a dive bezel on it, but it was a dive watch. And then it was that quirky, cool style. And they kept making the same thing, but then up the quality. And unfortunately, those high-end independents have come down in the market price. And so as the market has come down, Ming, unfortunately, it's kind of the opposite, right? A rising tide lifts all boats. Well, so does a lowering tide. It's going to kind of lower the boats. And Ming certainly, I believe, is getting left with some scraps here. I do want to see what they do with Ming as a brand into the future. I think they're capable, but I do see them kind of stuck. And it's like, well, once you have a Ming, you have a Ming kind of a thing. If you're a Ming fan, a bit of a tongue twister there, but leave that in the comments below. I'd like to, hear the Ming collector's perspective, because I like the watches, but I don't quite understand the collection of more of the same, but a little different dial color. Now, what do we see here with these brands? Well, they're all newer brands. They all had a bit of a trend where all the collectors were really chomping at the bit to get them, and they were notable. A lot of press around them, either on celebrities' wrists or in the Hodinkis and the blog to watch and all these things. They're getting a lot of press, and now maybe not so much. So that's where we see the pullback for these brands, and they can't rely on that any longer. They have to do something to retain collectors or gain collectors. And that shows that the collectors are no longer willing to pay the same types of premiums or display the same type of demand for these bandwagon brands. That's what I see. And where I see the collectors getting into is more of the watch brands that have been around for sometimes hundreds of years, right? I'm seeing trends. I'm seeing collectors buy watches. Of course, you have Rolex, not like where it was, but people are still buying Rolex, not at the highest premiums, but they are. But as well, you see more collectors buying the Omegas. Tudor, the Tudor Pelagos, we sell quickly at Del Rey Watch. People love them. They love that kind of a thing. Tudor does very well with collectors right now. Different price range from a Richard Mille. We get the idea. People are looking for more value in the watches that they're buying outside of the value of having other people want them, kind of the horological value, if you will. And then that takes us into Cartier. Collectors are getting into Cartier like I personally have never seen. They're digging up back catalogs. They're getting into the older watches, the watches that you couldn't give away, older Cartier Roadsters, for example. Collectors are getting into that, and Cartier is delivering. They're delivering cool variations of their Santos watches, and they're delivering the Santos Dumont with the interesting lacquer bezel. They're giving collectors a little bit more of what they want. Old world brand collectors are eating it up. And interestingly enough, another old world brand, though mostly known for jewelry, but they make watches, Piaget. Piaget, a brand where the boutique in the design district 4 years ago said that they would sell maybe 1 or 2 watches per month. Could have been a joke, but you get the idea. That was the sentiment of the brand. Now, somehow, collectors are seeing Piaget. They're getting into it. They like those stone dials, the lapis dials, the emerald or the jade. They're interesting stone or gem dials. They're getting into it. They're loving it. And it's an old world brand. So I think what we see here is collectors getting off the bandwagon pretty quickly, especially with these 3 brands, and getting into watches that have established long-term value, long-term notoriety in the watch space, and getting away from that trendline bandwagon because, hey, maybe there is a fear. I'm speculating, but maybe they do have the fear that there is this sudden pullback, and then their Journe is worth 30% less in a matter of 30 days, something like that. But once again, I'd love to hear, what do you have to say about this? What are your comments? You're all collectors out there, so I'd love to engage with you in the comments below. So please feel free to chime in, and we'll see you next time. You've been chatting with John P.